Okay. So welcome everybody to the podcast. Our today's topic is climate change, and our today's guest is Gautami. So she is my friend. So first of all, thank you, Gautami, for joining.
No problem.
Okay.
My
So
pleasure.
Gautami has completed his master's in science in environmental management. So first of all, Gautami, just give us a little bit about your past and what you did in your master's. Then we'll move towards our actual topic.
Sure, definitely. Thank you so much. Um, like Ganesh said, my name is Gautami Bhor. I have recently completed my master's in environmental management from the University of Auckland. So I'm living in New Zealand at the moment. It was a 2-year degree that I completed. It included coursework as well as research. So I actually had a chance to work into the research field for 1 year, wherein I completed my thesis on a very similar topic, talking about youth on climate change and what basically they feel about climate change and what steps they take to reduce the emissions from their side. More on that later on. But before that, I actually completed my bachelor's in IT. So Ganesh and I were together at Siagarh College of Engineering, and I completed my bachelor's. But then something felt a little off, and I always knew that an IT job was something that I didn't want to do. So I decided to step out of it. I took some experience in Pune, and then decided to come over here for my master's. So that's how my environmental journey started, basically.
Okay. So that's a nice thing. The one question that I want to ask is like, what prompted you to do environmental things, right? So basically, as you
Mhm,
said, you were we both in IT engineering, right, for 4 years.
mhm.
So basically,
Yeah.
at the time of selection of the career, basically at 12th, you decided to become.
Mhm.
Then you change.
Yeah.
So was it from childhood that you want to do something for other than this predefined jobs or careers like engineering and doctor, but somehow just ended up in engineering and then decided, okay, need to shift.
That I actually get that a lot. So what happened in the beginning, I was quite sure that I wanted to do engineering because it was something that I had a liking towards. But my initial decision was to do civil engineering, not IT. But something happened at that time was, you know how engineering works in India, right? Basically, parents kind of decide what you do, what you don't do. So my father himself, he's a civil engineer, and he said at that time that the market was really low, and he was a bit concerned about how my future might go if I choose to do civil engineering and do something in future based on those lines. So that's why we mutually took that decision, and we gave it a thought. And he said, okay, you can pursue IT first. Think about it. It might be something that is a little more secure for your future. And then, yeah, I kind of agreed with that. So I pursued my IT in bachelor's just to make sure that, just in case if something happens, I should have like a basic degree. But I was always open to doing environmental studies in the future. So that was always kind of a plan. And I was maybe thinking if I could collaborate both of them together. So use my IT skills towards the betterment of the environment. That was my plan in the initial stages. But that kind of happened, and environmental concern was something I had right from the beginning. So I wanted to step into that field, see how things work, maybe even if not look into the technicalities of it, if not maybe the biosphere, but I always wanted to see how people work around the environment, because we are like an integral part of it, right? Everything that happens around in the environment affects us. So that was something that drove me. What are people doing for it? What do they think? And how we can do something from our side to make sure that our environment stays safe. So it kept happening. And I did many things on the way as well. I was a part of an NGO. I took part in a lot of different social events. I used to go on cleanup drives. I used to go for tree plantations. So I tried and made my mark over there. I tried to give my contribution in those ways. I got together a lot of people as well for those events. So that was my way of communicating to people on how we should do things for our environment, and you know get them all together and start working on it. So that's how the whole journey started.
So that's like pretext to whatever you're doing right now. So you
Yeah.
how you decided the exact topic for your masters, right? Why people's
Hmm.
involvement in climate environmental activities, right? So why you decided that
Okay. Yeah.
specific topic? Because there are so many topics related to environment, right?
Hmm.
There are so many.
Right.
Why you did
Absolutely.
pick that one, the people's part in environmental activities?
People's part, yeah, absolutely. That's actually a really good point, and a lot of people do not know that there are so many different spectrums and aspects in environment. People just think when you first talk about environment, people just think that you are planting trees. That is like a very standard response I get everywhere in India. It's like a पेड़ लगाने के लिए, gardening करने के लिए. I'm like no, बहुत सारे अलग-अलग aspects होते हैं environmental studies के.
Stereotypes.
Yeah, very much stereotypical. I mean, if you see over here, they have a lot of different fields, a lot of different jobs. But unfortunately, in India, there's still a lot of growth to happen in that aspect because there's not a lot of knowledge available yet. So people still need to know about how environment works and how things are supposed to run. And like you said, there are many different fields. So there's basically environmental sciences that deals with basically zoology and plants and animals and all of those things, with the marine systems, with your waterworks. So it goes into the whole technicality of it. Environmental engineering as well, which again deals with marine engineering, geosciences, and all of those sectors. Environmental management, especially where I studied, dealt with the social aspects of the environment. And my reason for doing that was because I personally felt that it is every individual's responsibility to do something for the environment. So maybe if you learn these things on a technical scale, or if I chose to study about plants and animals, there wasn't much difference that I was going to make. I mean, that was my thought. Okay, I'm not saying that these people don't create a difference, they definitely do, but my outlook at that time was such that if I study about plants and animals more, I might just get to learn a lot about it and maybe contribute a little towards research. But if I work on a social level, I might be able to create some tangible change in the world so that people can learn what we can do and take simple easy steps in their daily lives so that we can create an atmosphere around us where people genuinely care about the environment and take steps towards it. So that was basically my entire outlook, and then I decided to learn more and more about these things. Obviously, where I learned, it's really country specific. So I learned a lot about the people in New Zealand. I learned about the social dimensions of climate change in New Zealand and maybe Australia. But then there is still a lot to learn about the global spectrum and see how we can work on a global scale, how every country has its own unique set of problems, and how we can learn from different countries to deal with our own problems, and how we can contribute on a small scale, maybe as individuals, as communities, as small businesses. There are a lot of aspects to it, and everything just kind of needs to come together to work on the right track.
Okay, so we'll come to that part, what people can do in their daily lives to affect this. So my question is kind of a philosophical one.
Okay.
What does environment mean to you? Like, what do you mean by environment? Because people's knowledge in terms of nature, or when you say environment, doesn't go beyond a tree. That's it. A green tree and a mountain and a sun in between. That's it. When you ask anyone, draw something nature, they just draw three things: a sun, a mountain, and a tree. So since you spend your good amount of time learning about environment, learning about nature, its impact on us and our impact on the environment. So what environment meant to you?
So basically, environment is everything around me. So that includes not just the nature, so that includes the trees around me, that includes the water, the animals, whatever natural aspects we have. It also includes the people around me. It includes all the man-made structures that we have created around us. It includes your cars, your buildings, the places you stay at, the clothes you wear, the food you eat. It includes everything, because it's a complete cycle. Basically, when we say that we live in an environment, it basically includes everything that you live with. We are not jungle people that when we think about environment, we only think about trees, because trees are not the only thing we are dependent on. We are dependent on water, we are dependent on the food that we grow, we are dependent on other people, we are dependent on the structures that we have created for ourselves. We have built houses for ourselves, we have created cars, we have created technology, we have mobile phones, computers. If all of these things have become an essential part of our life, and they all are inclusive of your own environment. So basically, everything that you do, every action that you take, and every single object that you use around you has an impact on your environment. And basically every person's environment collectively together creates the whole environment. That's how it is. So we cannot really define as if environment is one separate part and humans are a different part. We are all interchangeable. We are a part of this planet, so we automatically become a part of this environment. So you can't really separate both of them out. Obviously, it depends on what should get more priority. But again, that's for further discussion. So we'll talk more about that. But that's how it works. Basically, you are a part of the environment. You need to decide what you should give more priority to and what you should do to make sure that your survival, not just basically, it does not really restrict it to survival, but you live a good life nicely, flourish enough, and that you get everything that you need.
So that's a very good answer. So what I now let's move towards the actual topic today. Okay, climate change.
Okay.
So
Mm-hmm.
first and foremost question is, what is climate change? Okay, and now what I want to do is explain it like you are explaining it to a 10-year-old. Because
To a 10-year, yeah.
most of the people don't get it because they
Right.
think it's some superficial, very difficult, complex thing that we cannot understand. So let it.
Yeah, true.
I want all
That
of,
happens a lot.
what I want from you is explain it like you are explaining it to a 10-year-old. Okay. So what is
Okay.
climate change?
So basically, climate change is the climate around you that is changing. So we know what climate is, right? We have learned that since schools. It's the weather around us. Weather comprises of whether it's sunny or whether it's windy or whether it's rainy. So we know what weather is. We have different seasons. We have got winter, we have got summer, we've got rainy season in India. So we know what different seasons are when we know what the weather is going to be according to the seasons. If you maybe talk to your grandparents, you will realize they keep on saying, oh my god, इस बार ठंडी बहुत ज्यादा है, या फिर इस बार पिछले साल से ज्यादा गर्मी है. So you listen to them all this time saying, even your grandparents, your parents, everybody keeps saying that the weather is changing every year. That basically means that the normal conditions that are supposed to be in the environment at a particular season or at a particular time are now changing. अगर आप लोग ऑब्जर्व करोगे तो winters are supposed to be a 4-month season, summer is supposed to be a 4-month season, rainy season is supposed to be for 4 months in India, isn't it? We have the months segregated and we have learned that in school as well. But if you now observe, at least this is what I have observed in Pune, winters don't last that long anymore. They are barely there for like 2 months or so, maybe December or January. But we don't have winters for a longer period of time because it's getting warmer and the summers are excruciating. कोई अगर मतलब मई इन द मंथ ऑफ मई लोग बाहर नहीं पढ़ना चाहते घर से. एवरीबडी इज लाइक नहीं यार दोपहर के 12 बज के अभी घर पे ही रहेंगे. दिस वाजंट रियली द सिनेरियो बिफोर. हम लोग समर वेकेशंस में खेलने जाते थे. वी यूज्ड टू बी आउट इन द सन ऑल डे, एंटायर डे, सुबह से लेके शाम तक. We didn't really feel that much. Now you see kids are getting sunburns, they're getting heat strokes, और लोग बाहर जाने से डरते हैं. They have to be covered up completely. आप सनस्क्रीन लगाओ, कैप पहनो, सन प्रोटेक्शन के लिए जैकेट्स पहनो. I mean, you will also, if you think about it, you'll remember कि बचपन में चीजें कैसी थी and how this has changed. And obviously, it is going to change. It's not like कि weather constant रहेगा. But this is basically what climate change is. जो एवरेज कंडीशंस आप एक्सपेक्ट करते हो आपके सराउंडिंग वेदर की, वो चेंज होते हैं. दे आर नॉट एग्जैक्टली एट पार एट व्हाट यू आर एक्सपेक्टिंग इट टू बी. सो दैट इज बेसिकली व्हाट क्लाइमेट चेंज इज. आपके आजू बाजू के आपके एरिया में टेम्परेचर्स जो है वो बदल रहे हैं. यू आर गेटिंग वार्मर विंटर्स. पहले जहाँ पे विंटर सीजन में आकर फॉर एग्जाम्पल लेट्स से अगर 10 डिग्री टेम्परेचर होता था तो अभी 15-20 के आसपास होता है. दिस जस्ट एन एग्जाम्पल, इट्स नॉट वेरी स्पेसिफिक, बट दिस इज व्हाट इज हैपनिंग. अगर रेनी सीजन आपको अनटाइमली रेन्स यू आर गेटिंग, कभी भी बारिश हो जाती है क्योंकि हीट बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ गई है. रेनी सीजन के टाइम पे हमारे डैम्स फिलअप नहीं होते क्योंकि उस टाइम पे बारिश जितनी होनी चाहिए उतनी नहीं होती है. सो ऑल ऑफ दीज थिंग्स बेसिकली कंट्रीब्यूट टू क्लाइमेट चेंज, क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ का क्लाइमेट पूरी तरह से चेंज हो गया है. जो एक एक्सपेक्टेड सेट ऑफ कंडीशंस थी वो फुलफिल नहीं कर पा रहा है. दैट्स व्हाट climate change is in its basic definition.
Just by listening to this, there are so many questions popping up in my head. I was just taking just one after another. So,
Let them come in, definitely.
so the first thing, what I learned about the climate change by reading news and on YouTube videos or news is that it's not just the changing of the climate; it's the extremity of it. So in summer you have extreme summer.
Exactly.
In season you have so much rain that there are floods, and in winter you have too much cold. So it's just not the changing of the seasons; it's just extremity of it.
Extremity of it, exactly.
So can count as a climate change. And what I've learned is it's literally climate change. So
Change, exactly.
it's there in the name itself, climate change.
Climate change.
Yeah. So what I want from you is that now we usually see all those news in daily news broadcasting, right? There is flood. Now
Yeah.
people realize, okay, there is extreme drought, right? People aren't able to match that with the bigger narrative of climate change. Okay, so what I want from you is people have to understand is environment is not one single thread; it's a web.
It's a web, exactly.
Interrelated, right? So if you give tension to one thread, it's going to impact everything, right? It just
exactly
does that tension everywhere. So
that's true.
What I want from now is, can you explain how things are interrelated in environment, right? If there is a glacier melting from Himalaya or North Pole, how it affects your daily life here in Pune, right? So that we can why we should worry about melting ice glacier on Himalaya, right?
Right, absolutely. No, like you said, it is 100% true. You're absolutely right on that track. It is all interrelated, and like you said, it's a web. So even if like a slightest problem in one of the things around you can actually change something around you that's like miles away from you. You might not even feel it. For example, now if you see, if there's like a polar storm somewhere around in the US, the winds around over here in our area also get affected. There was a big bushfire in Australia recently. I'm sure everybody read about that in the news.
That means
it was extremely devastating. It
just
was
the optics of it was so horrible.
exactly, and it was terrifying. There were so many species that were lost. There was such a big amount of plant species and animals that lost their lives. So many people lost their lives in the bushfire, and the amount of impact it created on the environment was tremendous. But it happened in Australia, and we had orange skies in New Zealand for an entire day. So you can understand how big of an impact it was, that all the bushfire and all the smoke that it created came all the way to New Zealand and had orange skies in the day for an entire 24-hour period. So you can imagine how big of an impact that was. And this is what happens. If there's something changing in one part of the area, it definitely affects the other. Like you said, if there's like a glacier melting. So on these poles, the North and South Pole, if you see that there are ice glaciers melting all the time, you keep seeing a polar bear standing on a little block of ice. And that is like a big image of climate change.
Image, okay, later on. That's a poster boy of climate change, a polar bear.
Absolutely.
Afterwards, but continue.
Yeah, so basically that's what you see. And if you see that if the glaciers melt on a large scale, there are reports that have confirmed that the countries around these poles will face a maximum amount of devastation. So if the glaciers in the North Pole, in the Arctic Circle, melt completely, Canada will basically go underwater. That's what they have said. So it affects everything that's happening around you. If the glaciers are melting, there are going to be floods all the time because the amount of water that is rushing towards you is going to increase. And in India, we might not feel that because we are not close to the Arctic pole, but it's going to eventually hit us in some way or the other. So if there's effects happening on one side of the country, in one side of the world, we are definitely going to see it at some point or the other in our own country as well. There was like a good example that I actually thought of recently, the cyclones that were happening. So the coastal cyclones, it went from Mumbai and then down towards south and all of those things. Those cyclones, they actually did not start anywhere in Asia. The cyclones were a result of the winds that started over here in the western side. But you can imagine what kind of an impact it was to create a cyclone in the Indian side of it. So it's really, I mean, these are just like basic examples. I'm not really sure of the I'm not really sure of the technical part of it, and whatever I read in the news, that's what I saw. I didn't really go much into depth of it, but that's what I read, that it did not generate anywhere in the Indian region. It generated elsewhere, but we did have cyclones in our own area, so we can imagine how it works. And again, we have floods all the time. If we have flooding in Mumbai every year. Why is the sea level rising every time it rains in Mumbai? There must be some reason to it, right? I mean, we kind of get adapted to it because we are living in a particular area and we're like, oh, this is what is going to happen. So we learn how to adapt ourselves. But is that really the solution to it? We do need to adapt ourselves, but we also need to make sure that we find a solution to the root cause of the problem. So that's what we need to work towards. And for this, we need to understand how these events are basically created and what actions of ours create these events. That is more important.
There are like a couple of visible impacts of climate change. We can count one major visible impacts. One is drought, second one the flooding, and third one is the wildfires. Okay, so can you tell one by one how these things happen because of the climate change at your extent of knowledge, how much you know?
Yeah. So basically, droughts happen if there's like extreme temperatures in any of the areas. So mostly in desert areas, we observe that droughts are like very common, but that has been happening for years to come now. People in the desert areas normally depend on rains for their areas, but it does not because of the physical or the geographical conditions over there. Basically, for rains to fall, you need to have a good amount of vegetation. You need to have trees around there. That's how we can make sure. That's why in rainforests, you have a lot of rain because there's a plenty full of trees over there. But in the desert regions, you don't find that. So basically, droughts are happening because of that very reason. There are extreme level of temperatures and there's a lot of increase in deforestation. So any place that you see where there's deforestation happening, you will see that there are droughts happening as well. And you'll also see that the groundwater level over there is also decreasing because the roots are not able to basically hold on to the soil. So there's soil erosion happening, there's groundwater level being decreased in those areas. And deforestation again happens for a lot of reasons, mostly obviously because of human reasons itself, like for farming or animal husbandry, building up industries or building houses for ourselves. But that's basically what happens if deforestation and increasing temperatures is one of the biggest reasons for droughts. For flooding, again, temperatures play a really huge role. But then in this case, it melts the ice, and that's how you get a lot of flooding. And it's not just the ice melting that creates the flooding. There's also a lot of geography associated with it. A lot of movement underneath the ocean floor also creates a lot of floods, because that's something that we leave to the technicians, because I don't know much about that. I just know that if you have observed ever how tsunamis happen, is basically there's an earthquake underneath the ocean on the ocean floor. That's how tsunamis happen. So flooding is also at times a result of that. So any sort of movement beneath the sea level, basically beneath the sea, sorry, not the sea level, basically underneath the sea, that also creates droughts. Exactly, movement in tectonic plates, that's important. And if we talk about wildfires, there's like a big reason for that, again, being high temperatures. But most of the times wildfires are mostly man-made, because people want to clear the area. Again, deforestation, basically they want to clear the area for farmlands. That is what keeps happening. So that's why wildfires are primarily man-made. And there have been like so many speculations, even again for the Australian wildfires or the wildfires in the Amazon forest. There have been so many speculations whether these are man-made or whether these natural. There are a lot of debates going on, but it can be either of the reasons. Scorching temperatures definitely are a reason. We cannot deny that. If there is an increase in temperature in that area, it is going to affect the forest. But it is usually man-made as well. People need to know that too. So if It is a man-made activity, it's something in our hands. So we need to think about it, what we are doing, what we are not doing.
I was reading something about the wildfires. So there are a couple of people saying that it's natural as well, like it's nature's way of getting rid of old trees. So it's not like we
It is. Yeah,
the wildfire
definitely.
started on its own. So don't completely blame on humans. People are saying that. So how much?
Yeah, they do. I mean, yeah, but I mean, you need to realize how much of it is true. If it is, I mean, fires do happen naturally, and it is nature's way of getting rid of old trees. But if you are seeing that a huge expanse of the forest is on fire, and there's nothing happening about it, and it's getting news and media coverage, and it's taking so long to put that fire out. It basically that there were a lot of speculations about the Amazon forest wildfire, because they were talking about how the president wanted a lot of, like, basically ordered on how they wanted land for farming, or wanted land for something, which is why they decided to clear a part of that forest out, which is not a good sign. And it's not only about the trees over there. There are also a lot of tribal families living in those forests. You're basically taking away all the human lives in there. You're taking away their livelihoods. You're killing a lot of animal species too. Because if there is a natural wildfire in the forest, animals know how to get rid of it and how to keep themselves safe. But this was something very unprecedented. So,
So the dry areas keep on increasing, so it's becoming out of control.
it's becoming out of control. Even if it was natural, we definitely have some role to play over there, so that there's so many trees drying out. And it's a rainforest. In the rainforest, trees don't dry out. That's basically the logic behind it, because they're green. They're green all the time. They're mostly evergreen trees over there. So they're green all 12 months a year. So you can imagine on what scale it happened.
So for the people who don't know, Amazon rainforest produces 21% of Earth's oxygen, right? So that's why it's called the lungs of Earth.
Lungs of the earth, yeah.
About that Amazon rainforest cutting. So I was reading a report on that. So basically that's happening because the commercial farming of animals. So what is happening is meat consumption is increasing day by day. So we'll come on to that.
Exactly.
Diet and all this later. So now what I want to talk about is what is the actual like scientific causes of climate change. So for this particular section, we are going to get a bit technical. So there are couple of verticals, right? The again a major biggest big culprit is the carbon dioxide, right? So carbon dioxide comes from the cars, but most of the people only know that. That's it. Okay. So we'll come, and I have one other thing that we want to discuss. Why these are stereotypes about climate change? There are like typical 3-4 things that you can pick. These are the only things people know. Okay, so so first, just explain us what are the main causes of climate change, like scientifically, apart from just your carbon dioxide that comes from your car or bike.
Okay. So the primary basically reason for climate change is the consumption of fossil fuels. So fossil fuels again includes basically your petrol, diesel, oil, coal, gas consumption. And it is not just restricted to your cars, it's basically used in everything. Your electricity production throughout your households and for everything that you need basically comes from coal. You need oil and gas to power your cars, to power your machinery. It's used in industries. So that is where a majority part of it is coming from. So it's not just carbon dioxide, it's a lot of other gases. So there are nitrous oxides, there's methane, there's many other sort of chemicals coming out. There's carbon monoxide, and all these chemicals basically together form are called the greenhouse gases. So these greenhouse gases are basically responsible for creating the phenomenon called global warming. So what we have heard from global warming is basically it creates an effect where there's a layer of these gases formed around the earth, which form.
A second. So global warming is a subset of climate change, right? So that. What is on top, climate change or global warming?
First, climate change will come on top. So under climate change, you have everything. You also have your waterways. You also have lots of other things associated with it. Global warming is a part of it, which is basically created from the excess amount of emission of these greenhouse gases. So because that is a primary sector.
So I got confused, like what causes what? So, because
Mhm.
it's the same thing like artificial intelligence and machine learning, that what uses what. Those two are so
Yeah.
come so parallelly that people don't know what causes what. That's why I asked the question,
Mhm.
what is the umbrella term? So first is climate change, and below that is your
Global warming. Yeah. Global warming basically leads to climate change. That's what it is. So if you have a lot of emissions around you, if there's an excessive amount of emissions being generated in the atmosphere, that creates global warming, and that is responsible for basically, higher temperatures, or basically leading to all these untimely weather events. So that is what leads to climate change. So it is one of the primary reasons. There are many other reasons associated with it, again, like deforestation, like I said, that leads to climate change, and the reasons behind it being farming, animal husbandry, creating spaces for people to live, increasing population. All of these reasons, they also lead to climate change. Again, many other reasons, if you talk about it, there's a huge thing on marine life. That's like a completely different aspect of it. I'm sure that people have heard of the documentary Seaspiracy. That became a really big thing. I haven't watched it yet personally, but it basically focuses on what is going on in the marine life. So the oil coming out from different industries, and different big factories letting their oil outlets into the sea, that is killing like millions of different fish species, killing millions of water-based plants. It's all creating a big difference. So basically, climate change is happening because of our own actions. That is the primary reason for it. That the different sort of advancements that we are doing for ourselves is in turn creating an impact on the environment in a negative way. So we are trying to make our lives better in some way, but it's apparently not really creating a very good impact on the environment because of the things that we are doing. So we founded cars. We basically had horse carriages before, so we used to use animals for transportation. But somebody thought of using an automated vehicle, so we came up with the concept of a car. But then, what do you run the car on? So there are different things. First, it used to do manually, then something, then it became fuel based. Now we have electric cars, and there's been modifications going on all the time. But basically, these sort of advancements that we keep doing in our own lives leads to all these problems that we've created. And even if now we are trying to make up for things, there's still a lot to be done, because the things that we are trying to do is again creating a separate problem. So for example, I'll tell you, if we are now switching to electric vehicles, the batteries that were first basically used in the traditional sort of vehicles are now being disposed of. And the disposal of those batteries is a big problem, because there's no normal way of disposing those batteries, or basically without creating an impact,
are the
or
lithium
without creating.
ion based batteries, I guess.
Yeah, they are. But then fuel based, it's basically not possible for them to recycle those batteries, or basically refurbish them in any non-polluting polluting manner. So disposing of those batteries is again a big thing, and then again these are being dumped in the sea. That's what happens in a lot of places. They dump the batteries, they basically just like convert it into scrap, and then it goes into the whole landfill pile, and then it ends up in the ocean bodies. So you know
So,
fixing one problem is leading to another. That's what's happening.
so we are developing at the cost of environment. So we need
Kind of, yeah.
that term sustainable development much more.
Sustainable development. Yeah, definitely.
For that ocean thing, so I was watching a documentary a couple of days back. So it was again one of the famous documentary. So in which they
Mm-hmm.
said that we are everything, we are dumping everything in the ocean, right? In the
Yeah,
because we are out of land now to make them
exactly.
and plastic. This is just a horrible number that in around I think 250 to 2050, the number of plastics elements in the sea will be
Mm.
more than the species of fishes in the sea.
Species of fish. Yeah, absolutely.
More plastic in the ocean than the fishes itself. And
Yeah, that's
they
true.
were saying that it's not people just dump in the ocean and they forget it. So
Yeah.
it was very technical explanation of something that ocean is not flat out. The water is not flat out in ocean. So there are currents of
Mm-hmm.
water in the ocean. So what happens is
Yep.
whenever you dump anything, that comes at a one particular point because of that current, water currents. Some
Yeah.
dumping grounds has been developed in the ocean also. So there was very bad thing that happened was one marine life expert. They were researching and they dived. They saw a turtle. Okay, that turtle was in immense pain in the water. So they put the turtle to the boat, and what they found was there was like a this much long straw stuck in his nose.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So horrible. I didn't even complete the video. It was that bad. So we are torturing these animals indirectly, right?
Exactly. That is true.
Not understanding this thing, which is very horrible. So, since what do you think? Are we taking enough steps to stop this?
I don't know. I'm not really the right person to comment on whether, as globally, as a huge human community, whether we are taking steps or not, because there are so many different organizations that are working really actively towards this. But then again, it really depends on how much of it is being brought into action, you know. So if you maybe consider even the example of India, what I have observed personally is there are really specific regions where people are quite aware of these things. So I used to be a part of different social activities, and what I have seen so far that people, the community that I worked with in Pune, was quite aware of these problems happening, and they used to be in every different drive that I used to go to. As opposed to that, when I actually met people from different states, it was really, really shocking to see that people didn't know the basic things that we used to work on. I mean, it's really hard to see people not turning the tap off while they're brushing their teeth. This is like a very basic thing, you'll think, अरे ये क्या है, मतलब ये बहुत ही basic चीज है, स्कूल में सिखाते हैं. People don't follow that. Then you'll see so many people keeping the tap on while they're brushing their teeth, or like keeping the lights on when you leave the room. ये ऐसी छोटे छोटे चीजें होते हैं, but it's basically awareness. And there's a very big it's basically a hierarchy that needs to be followed. So whatever things we are doing on a small community level should also increase and reflect on a large governmental level as well. Big corporations and governments have a lot in their hands. So whatever policies the government formulate or whatever steps these big corporations take to reduce the impact on the environment indirectly affects us as well. If you see now, there are so many climate strikes happening where the youth is demanding the government to take action because they can see that their future is going to get jeopardized because of the actions being taken previously. And now they're demanding for a better future. So basically, these climate strikes are a way to, raise awareness and drive the governments to take more action towards formulating environmental friendly policies. So it's all a big, like you said, it's a web, but this hierarchy needs to be followed, where the government basically makes policies and people get to implement on it. The project that I was working on right now had like a very similar outcome. The one that I studied, I had a group of around approximately 20-21 young people in the age group of 16 to 24. And I asked them whether they felt that, climate change was their responsibility or whether it was the government's. So most of them did say, everybody needs to play a part and all of those things. That it's our responsibility too, and the government also needs to work on it. But basically what I found from their outlook was that they basically wanted the government to take steps. They were like, okay, I agree that I need to take steps, but there are so many things that need to happen for me to not do a certain thing. So for example, I can't build a car myself, or I can't devise, or I'm not responsible for building the roads in this city, or I am not responsible for the public transport system in this city. So for me to be able to use these systems properly and to basically create an impact from my side, I need to have that infrastructure in my hand, which will help me take more environmentally friendly steps. So now, for example, if you see, I don't know, because in India, I don't think I've ever seen a separate bin for recycling. We have the dry waste and wet waste like segregation, but we do not have a
this recycle thing actually works. I mean, there are so many reports that I see people do label everything as a recycle, but most of the things just end up in dumping grounds.
They do end up in dumping grounds because we do not take enough action to recycle these products. Even if they are recyclable, we need to make sure that they actually are recycled. But again, like I said, it's a negligence from a lot of people. Over here also, even if you see that a certain product that you have in your hand can be recycled, but if you throw it in the general garbage bin, it's going to go with the general garbage. If you see that you have a recycle bin on the side, you can just take a little bit of effort and put it in the recycle bin. And again, the governmental authorities over here also play a very big role. So if the governmental authorities are strict about their waste management and their segregation, these problems won't occur. But if you basically, even if you have 3 separate bins, okay, and if even if people are following that very religiously, but at the end of the day, if you're just going to mix the whole waste and then put it in the dumping ground, it makes no sense. So basically, these waste management companies and the government and the policies that they make, they need to be strict enough, and the regulations need to be in place so that all these things will happen properly. A lot of countries have created a model like that, which basically shows that these things can happen. A good example of that would be Singapore. They had a lot of waste problem in the recent years, but they decided to take a look at it, and they made sure that basically the policies that they created were strict enough and that the general public in the country basically complied by it. So even if they created the policies, they made sure that the public just didn't disregard it. They made sure that everybody followed it, and with strict rules and regulations. You literally can't see anybody throwing a piece of plastic on the road.
I think Singapore is the one who came up with that green building concept. I think, right? So,
Well, yeah, sort of. I mean, there's a lot of credit you can give to many countries for the green building purpose. I'm not really sure of that. China is one of the biggest countries that have the have you heard of the term vertical gardening? So
yeah,
they have this
I'm talking like Singapore literally have buildings which has trees are in their balconies.
trees around it. So
Entire
China,
architecture of the
yeah,
country is designed that way that you can plant trees
exactly.
outside.
Yeah, so there's a lot of countries that do that. China is actually working on that right now and is one of the leading countries to do that. So they have actually created an entire township based on that particular model. So all the buildings that they have in the vicinity and all the infrastructure that they have is basically based on that. So they're creating a green city within China itself. So
So since we are
that's what's
talking about government policies and like in last 5 minutes with like government word was coming like every
mm-hmm.
so I just want to
Yeah.
talk about the politics of climate change. So if you see like
Mm-hmm.
uh, the moment Donald Trump got elected, he pulled US out of the
Mm-hmm.
Paris Agreement. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you see in US, because the reason I'm talking about US is their policies affect the entire world. So
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
it's not just the politics of US, it's common most of the places in countries. These politicians are bankrolled by these petrochemical companies, right?
exactly.
We
Yeah,
upon them not to pass laws that will affect their income, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
That's the first thing of so I'll give you 2 3 points and then you can talk on that. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing, that these people are funded by these petrochemical companies. So these
Yeah.
politicians will take that those many efforts to hurt these people.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah.
second part is countries like us, right, who are in the developing or
Mm-hmm.
countries. These countries say that look, our first priority is to help the poor, right?
Yeah.
So in order to do that, if you want to set up a factory, we'll set up it because our
Mm-hmm.
first initiative is to bring economic prosperity to our country, and then we'll think about the climate change. So I think people have
Exactly.
completely misunderstood the economy of climate change, right? How
Mm-hmm.
climate change actually affects the poor, because
Yeah.
it's like counter interactive. Like what I have understand from this entire thing is that whenever there is a flood, the first house that will be flooded by will be a house of a poor farmer or some poor people who are slum just on the verge of the bank of the river, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It gets flooded, the water doesn't go in the homes of those rich people who lives in those tallest buildings, right? It goes into the
Exactly.
house of the poor people. So climate change affects poor people the most. So
Exactly.
if you want to help those poor people, you should do these things first, right? So,
Exactly.
yeah. So those are the things I want you to elaborate a little bit more on the politics of climate change that's happening. People so
Mm-hmm.
will only protest help because protests are happening all over the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whenever we see
So,
something in danger, we name a day after it. So we have Earth Day, we have Environment Day. We do see protest on those days, but will that
Mhm,
affect to change the political will, or we need something else? And second part is the economic.
mhm,
How we should convey people that if you want to help the poor,
mhm.
you really need to save the environment.
Exactly. So if I'm being like brutally honest, I am the last person to get involved in any sort of politics. So I keep myself away from the political agenda basically completely. I know a few things here and there, and obviously US politics is like a very big thing because it keeps coming in news all the time. And yes, it was a big thing that Donald Trump pulled out of,
Right.
the Paris Agreement at that time because of the pressure that he had on companies. Not pressure per se, I would say, but basically it's like you said, it's an economic benefit that they get from these petrochemical companies, like all big companies like BP or Shell or whatever, whoever they are. So these companies basically are able to, they create this kind of pressure on the political parties, or basically they try and put pressure on the governmental agenda so that there is more and more being filled up in their pockets. And this is again in turn related to the media that covers all of these things. So if you see in US, why you find so many climate deniers, not just in the upper hierarchy, also in public.
Like there are people who just flat out deny climate change, like there is no climate change.
Yeah.
And there are second people who say there is climate change, but it's not man-made.
I know. There are so many different aspects to it, that there are people who deny the science of climate change, there are people who deny the economics of climate change, and then there are people who are just like yeah, this is basically just a political agenda. This is, we people are just, the government is trying to track us, which is why they have created this concept. This is very weird. I mean, people, if you are on Facebook or if you are on any other social media, basically if you have a Google account, if you have any other social media account, you're basically being tracked. I mean, this is not news anymore. All of your information is out there. Everybody knows it. Just by creating a few things like these, or by putting up that climate change is real, does not mean that people are trying to track you. This is a very weird concept that I came across, that people keep saying, oh no, the government wants to keep tabs on me. That's why they've created all these different climate change policies and blah blah blah. That's why they're trying to tamper with my house also. I'm like, no, that's crazy. You can't say that. And basically there are people who just flat out deny science. There's a lot of times, if you, especially if you observe in the US, there's a lot of times religious views being involved in this. So people usually deny the science of climate change because they are more religious per se. I'm not going to name anything or anyone over here, but basically that's what happens. If you're blinded by the whole religious agenda of it, you're not able to see the science behind it. There are science deniers, basically people who do not believe in science in the first place.
I don't know where did you came across this thing. There are people in US who thinks Earth is flat.
Yeah, they do, and they're
And
very
we have proper
strongly believe.
convention and all that for those flat Earth people.
Yeah, that it's crazy. I mean, the extent people will go to make their point, it's crazy. And you'll especially see this in the Western countries because they have the privilege to do all of these things. We, on the other hand, don't think so much about it. So, like I said again, so the religious views are like one big factor. Secondly, there's economy again. So people trying to say that, oh, they're trying to take money from us, or basically these so and so other countries are trying to take money from our country, which is why they are trying to put this whole climate change thing. A lot of policies from the Paris Agreement or the Kyoto Protocol that came in to deal with climate change basically had the developed countries helping the developing nations overcome their own emissions. So they basically invested their money in those countries and made sure that their emissions were balanced. So there's this whole science behind it. A lot of people basically did not agree with that either. They're taking money from our country. Oh, what is this? So, a lot of reasons why people do not believe in climate change. Media plays a huge role. in this. So whatever the media portrays, people just tend to believe that that is true. And this is where it comes in picture. So when we were talking about the picture of a polar bear standing on a little block of ice, it basically just instills in your mind, oh, this is something bad that's happening. And you know why that image is so effective is basically it connects to some emotional part of your mind. So basically, media and the climate imagery that is being used out there creates a huge difference. And like this, how people use this positive imagery, there are also a lot of people, a lot of basically media houses that use negative imagery as well. So whatever they use, and there might be a lot of political organizations behind that, but whatever imagery that they use is basically used to distract people from the fact that climate change is real and put in their minds that, oh, this is not something that you need to worry about or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And people are very easily influenced. Media basically rules us. So whatever we see in the news, we believe that it's true. And we should. I mean, for that very reason, media needs to be ethical, isn't it? But at many times it's not. That's why it's really important what sort of imagery is being projected in front of us as well. So we need to make sure that whatever information is being fed to us is also authentic. I don't know what ways are now there to find out what information is authentic because everything's a mess. But yeah, that
like media is the root of all evil, basically.
Basically, yeah.
Problems are there because of this media. So
I
as
know.
Talking about like one of the main topic that I want to talk about is the communication of climate change, right? So you said
Yeah.
imagery plays a very vital role. So I think the climate deniers, climate change deniers are very successful is conveying their message more properly than the people who are saying climate change is real.
Exactly.
So people do basically what I have read from all the news articles is that they tap into the people's today's fear, right? So you said about the polar bear image, right? So you looked at like a positive image, right? You felt bad for that polar bear. But people use that same image and just change the message. So basically what these people have become successful is that they tell people, okay, that polar bear, forget about that polar bear. But if we shut down that factory, you will lose your job, right?
Yeah.
You will lose your livelihood. Think about that.
Exactly.
So what has happened because of that polar bear imaginary is that people don't care about a random polar bear on North Pole who is losing his habitat. What they care about is a pothole in front of their house on the road, right?
Yeah, true.
Climate deniers have successfully linked their message to the today's problem. Right?
Exactly. And that's what basically a lot of people do as well. Even if you find that there are people who do care about the environment or who do care about climate change, they will basically say, oh, I get only one life. I'm going to live a very small, like a limited period of time. I want to live life on my terms. So I will do what I feel like. This is a very common conception amongst people. When it comes to talking about environment, people don't want to step out of their comfort zone. That's a very big thing. So, if you ask somebody to maybe segregate their waste, or if you ask somebody to use a certain, how can I say, use a certain appliance less. So over here, basically what happens is we have a washer and dryer, right? So you put the clothes in for drying as well, and then it just comes out all dried up. But I normally prefer not to do that because it's like a 3-hour cycle. So I feel rather than wasting all of that electricity and using all of that water and steam, I'd rather put the clothes out for drying manually. That's my outlook for it. But then a lot of people think that, I don't have time for all of this. I'd rather spend time on Instagram rather than putting the clothes out for drying and then wait for them to dry. So I'm just giving you an example. This is what basically happens. People want everything to be comfortable. People want everything to be convenient at their own doorstep. That is why people will think twice before taking a bus, but they'd rather use their own vehicle to travel to a certain place, even if it's really close to their house. अगर आपको ग्रोसरी लेने कहीं पे भी जाना है, अगर आपका घर बहुत पास में भी है, फिर भी आप अपनी स्कूटी निकालोगे और लेके आओगे उसको. And I have done that myself as well. I'm not saying that I am really perfect. मैंने भी किया हुआ है. It takes a little amount of realization, and it actually takes a lot of willpower to change your habits and make sure कि आप जो भी steps ले रहे हो, those are towards the benefit of the environment. So that's basically how it works.
I think basically climate change has a branding problem. Basically,
It
nowadays
does.
everything comes down to branding. So that
Yeah, that is true.
if you replace that polar bear with a man drowning in a river, then maybe people think.
Yeah. Then maybe people will think, yeah, oh, something's happening. If I don't know, if you probably should see this, which European country it was, and I forgot now. Like it was in Amsterdam, I mean in Netherlands or Germany, I don't know. Some country, there's like this big a big mural, a statue sort of. It shows a lot of people underwater and it's just like their heads coming up. And that statue is called The Politicians Talking About Global Warming. So they basically portrayed it in a very nice manner. So they've put all those people underneath and they're discussing some bill, but they're basically till water up to here. So they're trying to portray this message that, even if the politicians are going to talk about all these things, global warming is happening right now. So you need to take action on it. Otherwise, you'll make discussions like this underwater in a few years. So,
And like just we discuss about day-to-day activities like putting proper garbage in proper garbage cans, right? So now
yeah.
it's become rich people's problem. Like people think rich people talk about climate change. That's not the real.
Yeah,
I think we need
that
to
is true.
make the communication better than what we have right now. Until we don't make this is a day-to-day life problem, nobody's going
Yeah,
to look at it.
nobody cares about it.
Everyone is like, I have one life and I'm going to live it on my terms.
Yeah, true. That is very true. I mean, I don't know how to go about that. I mean, that's why there are a lot of NGOs working on it. They're trying to create awareness amongst people. One way to look at it would be, I mean, maybe it's a bit difficult to instill it in somebody's mind who's like around maybe 24, 25 or so. They're not absolutely young either, so that they can, listen to all these things and think, oh, it's my planet and I should do something about it, because there's a lot of young people coming up too. But this problem is observed in apparently this age category, wherein they have just started living their lives properly, just started having a steady income, and they've just learned how to enjoy their lives on their own terms. So they don't want to be interrupted by things like environment and climate change and caring about the nature. So this is basically what happens in such age groups. So creating awareness about climate change has to be done according to a particular age group as well. You can instill this in young minds, saying that, oh, this is what your future is going to be. So if they think about their future, they will basically think about the environment. If you tell a group of adults in their late 30s or 40s that your children are going to live this life ahead further, they'll also think about it, because they want their children to have a better life. They want their children to have a better life, basically. If you talk about this to old people, they don't really care much. Most of the times, I'm not saying all, they don't care much because they have been accustomed to a certain standard of living their entire life and they don't want to change it now. So, every age group has its own way of dealing with this issue, and every age group needs to be targeted with a specific sort of awareness campaign or a program that will reach out to them.
Only tap into emotions of these people. Like
Exactly.
people care about, and then we need to link that to the climate change. Okay,
Link that to climate change. Exactly.
change.
Because not everybody thinks about the environment as much as they're supposed to. People just tend to think, okay, there's somebody else maybe thinking about it. I don't have to. That's what happens.
If there is no social will, there will be no political will as well. Because politics
exactly
about what people think. So that
exactly.
So what I want the next question to be is, what are the things that currently underway in order to save the planet, right? Like one or two initiatives that are actually effective and are still running. Any names, initiatives or things that any government or like you work with many NGOs, right? So these NGOs, something that has actually created impact, so that we can give people, okay, this works. This is not some
This
just
does work, yeah.
things going on that people think of it. If this is going for 10 years and this hasn't given us any output, right? Then why?
Right.
Can you give us
Absolutely.
if you just one example that we did this and this actually created an impact on the environment?
I'll give you an environment. I will give you a governmental change that was created over here in New Zealand. So in 2019, 2018, 2019, there was a youth movement over here by a lot of youth-led NGOs who wanted to create a change on a large scale, on basically on a national scale, to reduce the emissions being generated out there. So because of the strike that they did and because of the movement that they had created, the government basically came up with this zero carbon bill in 2019 that has now dedicated to lead the country to net zero emissions by the year 2050. And this has been quite successful so far. The government is basically investing in the going 100% renewable in this country in terms of electricity. So a lot of electricity companies over here basically used to have coal powered plants, but now they're all switching to either hydro, or they're switching to nuclear, or they have basically other ways of generating electricity. So this is what has happened because of the bill that is passed, and now New Zealand is gradually turning towards having 100% renewable energy in the country. And this is a change that has been seen on a large scale and is observed by everybody in the country. One good example in India that I'll give you, it's not something that people think of as really related to climate change, but the beach cleanup that was done in Mumbai by this one man, it became a really huge news as well. So that was a really inspiring and motivating thing that he did. So the beach cleanup that he conducted, he started on his own, but then he had so many people join in. And because of the cleaning that he did, now there are a lot of olive ridley turtles coming up to that beach, laying their eggs in there and then going in again towards the sea. So basically that entire movement has supported a whole species of sea animals now that can thrive over there and basically are protected again by the people. So if we think that maybe one person can't change anything, but that one man started it. He was supported by all these people and he literally cleaned that beach out. If you see the before and after pictures, it was amazing. The way he took initiative and the way he changed things around over there. There was no garbage in the sea around over there. There's no garbage on the beach now. There are different species coming in. There are all those turtles laying eggs over there, and it's a beautiful thing. So it took like about 2 years or so, I guess, but he did it in 2 years period. That entire portion of the beach, that entire sea portion was cleaned up. So that's one example that I always love. I definitely admire the project that was done over there. It was beautiful.
We need more positive stories like this to be on the news channels and give them some
Exactly.
people can understand things can change. It's not some difficult.
True.
Environment is such a big thing that people think, why I'm a very small person, how can I change the environment?
Exactly. You keep doing your own part as one individual, and you will see a ripple effect happening. So if you do one thing today, you will see a lot of other things happening around you tomorrow. It's not that your change is going to go unnoticed or it's not going to create any effect at all. It definitely does create an effect. And if everybody starts thinking on similar lines, it is going to make a huge effect. So, we need to think more about on how we can do individually and then at a community level, and how it will create a change around for each one of us. Forget about anything happening on a large scale physically. If you yourself decide that you are not going to use a plastic bag today for whatever reason it is, don't you feel satisfied your own self?
Right.
If you use a cloth bag, or if you use any sort of like a paper bag or whatever, and if you think, okay, I am not going to use this plastic bag for anything, I will carry my own. Suppose if you go out to get some food or something and you carry your own container with you, rather than buying the paper bags that you get food in, or the plastic containers, the takeaway containers that you get, if you carry your own tiffin box and you get food in it, you yourself get a sense of satisfaction that you have done something nice and that you have played a small role in protecting the environment and you have created lesser waste.
Right.
It's as simple as that. You should do it for your own mental satisfaction. It will lead to an effect automatically.
This environment subject is so big. There are like hundreds of questions still in my brain, but
Absolutely.
because of the time, we are coming to the end of the podcast now. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, what I want all you to comment on is there are some keywords that are just floating around whenever we are discussing about climate change or wherever there is discussion, maybe on the internet or
Mm-hmm.
so. I just want your small opinion on these topics. Okay.
Just a second, Ganesh. Just give me a second. Hi there. Yeah. So sorry, my laptop was running out of battery, so I just got my charger real quick.
Not live, so we can always read it out.
Sorry.
So the first topic that I want your opinion on is electric vehicles. Now you did
Mm-hmm.
us a little bit of an opinion before, but I just want to
Mm-hmm.
elaborate a bit on. Does it actually affect? Does it actually create that monumental effect that these people portray or say that electric vehicle will just save the entire world? So does it have that much impact on actual preventing climate change? Electric vehicles.
Electric vehicles definitely do have an impact on changing the environment, or helping climate change, because in the first place, basically the emissions that you get from burning all these fossil fuels, that won't be there. So that is a key. It's a one of the primary things that we need to change is the way we transport ourselves or the way we use our vehicles. That is basically going to make a big difference on the amount of emissions that are being generated out there. So yes, electric vehicles do create a change. The amount of change that will be created, I'm not sure about that, but yes, they do create a change, because the amount of carbon dioxide that is being emitted from the cars at the moment is tremendous. And if you see that the population is increasing continuously, so the requirements of people are also increasing. Previously, having a car used to be a luxury. Now, because of all the affordable prices and all these different small cars that we get at cheap prices, the second-hand cars that we get, having a car has become very normal. You can see 1, 2, 3 cars in a family of 4 people, in a family of 5 people or so. So it's become very easy for people to procure these vehicles basically. So the number of people that are increasing, and because of the easy accessibility and availability of these particular equipments, it has become, the emissions also have increased on a large scale. If previously the whole family used to have one car, which used to be like taken out only on special occasions, now 17, 18-year-old youngsters also use their car to drive just like a couple of blocks away from the house,
So
just to take like a small drive.
still say that even though you are using an electric vehicle, your electricity is still coming from the coal power plant, right?
Exactly,
But
it
I
still
think
is.
still a bit more effective than using gasoline car by everybody, right? Because of the transport.
Exactly, it definitely,
Of your,
because of the transportation. Yeah, basically because of the transportation and because of the amount of emissions coming out of it. The exhaust that basically, when you burn these fuels, when you burn petrol or diesel or natural gas or whatever it is, when you burn it, the amount of emissions that are being generated from burning those fossil fuels is tremendous, and they are toxic. Which is why if you stand in front of an exhaust, if you have all of the carbon in your face, you basically won't be able to breathe. That's why you start coughing, right? So it has toxic effects on the environment as well as the human life. So if you don't have those emissions coming out, if you use electric vehicles, that part of it will definitely be excluded.
so the
So
same question was asked to Elon Musk by someone in a press conference that
mm-hmm,
if your car is electric car, right? But
mm-hmm,
your electricity is still coming from coal power plant, right? So how are
mm-hmm,
you making a difference? So he gave a very nice explanation. He said that if you bring down to a single point, the
mm-hmm,
distribution point, for example, in your entire state, there is only one
mm-hmm,
power plant which is based on coal, which is producing electricity. It's very
mm-hmm.
easy to optimize that power plant to make
Yeah,
it more carbon neutral, right? But instead, if you
mm-hmm,
do petrol diesel to everybody, now everybody's car is different. Everybody's car is
exactly,
different. How are you going to optimize that? So even just by
exactly,
doing this, you are preventing a lot of carbon by going to
exactly,
the air, right? So that it's not
absolutely.
it makes a systemic change.
It definitely makes a big change. And there are also changes happening to the way we produce electricity now. People are investing more and more in renewable sources now that they have realized the importance of it. It will take a lot of time, obviously. It's not something that will happen suddenly, but people have realized the importance of renewable sources of energy. There are so many investors investing in solar power now. People are understanding how important solar energy is, especially in a country like India. We should make the most of the sunlight that we get. If we are gonna have like healthy summers, if you're gonna have like extremely hot summers as well, we should make use of it. Why use electric geysers in the house when you can use a solar water heater? Isn't it? It's very small things like these, and this is definitely happening. So we should give it enough time, and we should have faith in the system a little bit. So
Scandinavian countries are very ahead in this thing, right?
definitely countries like Sweden,
Finland, Denmark, Sweden, all the Scandinavian countries.
absolutely. It is, I mean, it's amazing to see the way that they have changed. I mean, the way they have normalized these things in their country, basically. It's, I mean, they literally have to. There was a situation in between where Sweden had to purchase waste from other countries because there was no waste being generated in their country at all. So they needed all the waste because they utilized the waste in their country to generate power, basically. I'm not saying it's like the most perfect way of doing it. It's at the end of the day, it's incineration. But by utilizing that waste to turn, because they need heat over there, they're like extremely cold. That's why every house over there by law needs to have a has to have a heating system. That's where they use the waste of that came from people's houses, or basically that came from industries, to generate power over there and create heat. And this system was so efficient that they had to purchase waste from other countries because they did not have any at a certain point. It wasn't enough to suffice their needs. So you can imagine the way they have basically made a systemic change, and how people also have abided by the rules of the government and the policies that are being generated. So
the next buzzword that I always hear is a plant-based diet. So can you explain how excessive meat consumption, which is actually on the rise, even though we are hearing these kind of things, the meat consumption which is on the rise is helping fueling the climate change. Can you explain?
Yeah. So basically, like I said before, to basically said for meat consumption, you need to raise a lot of animals, right? And to raise a lot of animals, you need to have enough farmlands. And to have enough farmlands, you have to cut down forest. It's like in very simple terms, if I'm explaining to you, there's a certain amount of farmland that you need to have for animals for grazing, and then you need to have crops that you need to build for them, that you need to plant for them. So basically, by all this deforestation that is happening, that because the meat consumption is rising, people need more and more animals. That is why more and more forests are being cut down as well. That is one of the primary reasons why we have a lot of emissions today, because of deforestation. And we might not think in India it's not really that big a problem because we basically do not consume red meat a lot. But in all these Western countries where beef is one of the most common eaten forms of meat, it's really, really difficult to see that there are so many forests cut down just for building pastures so that the cows can graze over there and they can be raised in a nice environment, and they would have like plentiful of food for themselves so that you can raise them for beef purposes. So, basically that is one of the things that is creating a lot of issue. Actually, the meat sector is it creates like around, I think, approximately, it said like 1/3 or 1/4 of the entire greenhouse gas emissions that you see.
Fuel, I think. First is fuel,
Yeah.
fashion industry. That is one
Fashion industry.
thing.
Yeah.
And the third one is, I guess, the meat.
The meat industry, yeah, absolutely. It has constructs like almost 1/3 or 1/4 of the greenhouse gas emissions that we have today. And it's primarily because of deforestation. Many other reasons like cows emitting methane. That is also one of the reasons. So the more cows that you raise and the kind of food that you give to them, they are one of the primary producers of methane as well. So that is also another factor. It is quite on a large scale. It's not like it's a very minuscule thing, but it does create a big impact as well. So this is basically why people are trying to switch to a plant-based diet. Even if you have like big pastures, now people are switching even to soy milk, plant-based milks, almond milk, rice milk, things like that. So even if you do like a small comparison, the amount of water that is required for a farm of soya is a lot less compared to the amount of water that you need to raise a certain number of cows. So, you can imagine the difference that is being.
Any solution to this? You cannot drink a cow milk, you cannot drink a soya milk. People like, what I do?
Yeah, I know, exactly. See, I'm not saying that it's really, easy to switch your diet or anything,
This
but
frustration leads
definitely.
to like, I'm not doing anything. Forget about it.
Exactly. I know. No, that happens a lot, and it's definitely not easy to change your dietary requirements. It's very, very difficult. The least we can do is try and balance things out. In India, it's not that difficult to balance things out because we basically have almost half of our population is vegetarian, basic. So, and we
Also,
have a lot of.
I don't know how, but
Yeah, I mean, see, because we have so many people who basically are vegetarian, and it's been going on for generations and ages now, and we have a lot of choices and options. If whenever I spoke to people over here, they thought that being vegetarian was such a big thing because they had to transition into it because they traditionally eat a lot of red meat like beef and pork and chicken, which is not the case in our country. We originally have a lot of options, so we can obviously, it becomes a little easier for us to transition to these plant-based diets. There are people over here who are now adapting to Indian and Asian other sorts of diets so that they can consume more vegetarian food. I'm not promoting any sort of diet over here, but I am vegetarian myself, so I know that exactly. I mean, so I don't feel that I have been left out, or I don't feel like I miss anything because I haven't had meat in my life like ever. So
that's some another discussion, that veg versus non-veg thing. But
yeah, exactly. So I can't I can't comment on how people feel when they have to change their dietary requirements. But if it is possible, and if it is something that you can do, it's within your power, it's definitely a good thing to do that because it definitely does create a large amount of emissions. And there's this thing called a carbon footprint for every individual. So your carbon footprint is basically dependent on the amount of emissions that you generate from your day-to-day activities. And meat consumption creates a huge amount of carbon footprint. So
so
to
I was
basically
reading
reduce,
about that
yeah.
report about the Amazon rainforest. So
Mm-hmm.
what they said was that they are building the rainforest, they are making the farmland, but that farmland is also not for producing fruits and vegetables. That farmland
Mm,
produce soybean, because those cows
okay.
can be fed on that soya. So that
Yeah.
what we can say, whatever is going to farm, that is not even from
Mm,
people; it's for those cows.
exactly. It's for those animals.
Still shocked to hear 42% of US farmland is used to produce things that cows eat, not humans eat.
Yeah,
42,
exactly.
half the country's farmland is used for that. So,
Exactly. Because people eat those cows. They don't need to eat anything that's coming off the farmlands.
the scale of this problem.
Exactly.
Yes. So the
Right.
last thing, last topic I have, you can, I
Mm-hmm.
discussed before the podcast, you wanted to talk about your program, right? People's Party,
Mm-hmm.
environmental.
Yeah.
So the last
Yeah.
moment is coming up is no waste lifestyle. Okay. So now
Okay. Yeah.
this a single individual can do, right? You cannot do
Mm-hmm.
big things like policy change and all these kind of things, but this thing,
Mm-hmm.
no waste life cycle, right? That's getting promoted. Currently, again, it's a rich thing, so people are not
Mm-hmm.
looking that much into it. But still,
Yeah.
so you can add your answer to this, okay? And we can
Mm-hmm.
the podcast that what does mean no waste life cycle is, and
Mm-hmm.
how much effect it can have on the environment to reduce the climate change.
Okay. So a lot of scientists or a lot of researchers often believe that, waste is not really a big part of climate change right now, and that there are many other important things that you need to work on, like basically cutting down your meat consumption, the way you travel, or the kind of electricity you use. Obviously, these are like very, very big things that we need to focus on. But it also matters the amount of waste that you generate out over there, because it basically ends up somewhere. That is the basic philosophy behind it. It does not dissolve into thin air. Whatever waste that you generate, it ends up somewhere, right? I'm not sure if you've heard of it, there's this big thing called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is like a
That's the thing I was
huge,
thinking about.
that's the one, yeah,
This happens because of the current in the water that gets saturated at only.
exactly. It gets saturated right over there, and all the waste from all these different parts of the continent and from all these oceans, it comes up over there in one big pile of garbage and junk. So you cannot imagine the amount of impact it has on all these different species. And the waste that we generate today, it's going to remain forever. We might have a piece of plastic with us that we just throw out today for no reason and forget about it tomorrow, but that piece of plastic is going to be there even after the next 2000 years.
Right.
So you can imagine that it is not going anywhere. If 3 generations, 4 generations after you that will come over here, they'll still see, oh, this is what my great grandmother or great grandfather left over here. It's going to be there intact without anything happening to it, and it's dangerous. If I don't know if there was this report in between that came in that a lot of a lot of babies that are born today basically are born with microplastics in their body.
So it's just not animals.
It's not animals, it's humans as well. A lot of, because we have been consuming a lot of food and water that basically might contain microplastics, because of the amount of plastic that has been used and being dumped here and there everywhere. Our water bodies have plastics in them by default now. That is why a new life that is being born into this world already has microplastics in its body. Can you believe that? That is weird. I mean, that is not supposed to happen. We can't have plastics in our body naturally. That is something.
That is the most revolutionary thing that has happened. Evolutionary.
Exactly.
Evolutionary thing.
Evolutionary thing, exactly. And it's not normal having microplastics in the body of a baby that's just born. So you can imagine how much we are reliant on plastic and how much microplastics we ourselves are ingesting right now. So many products that we don't even think of. Chewing gum has got plastic in it. The water that we drink every day, we don't know, whatever the source of it is, it's got microplastics in it. The food that we consume, everything has got plastic in it now, all because there's a lot of plastic being generated. And not just plastic, there's also other sorts of waste. There's like there's thermocol, there's polyesters and all sorts of other fibers, even paper. I mean, people do feel that
plastic only, right? Plastic is not just a common term, but there are different types of plastics.
Yeah, different types of plastic. I'm talking about, yeah.
One type of plastic.
Absolutely.
Just a chemical formula is different. Otherwise, it's the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was talking about the single-use plastics before, like your water bottles or your containers or plastic bags, straws, things like those, cutlery, but also these other things. And even if you think paper, people might think that, oh, using paper instead of plastic, it's a good thing. It's not. It takes a lot of time for a paper to decompose and form manure. It basically ends up in a landfill. It's just adding on to more waste. Reusing your own cloth bag is the only thing that you can do. You cannot rely on paper bags either. I mean, it's a better option than plastic, but it's not like you're evil free if you're using paper bags instead of plastic. It's not. Definitely not. So we need to make sure that the amount of waste that we generated in our life is minimalistic. And if you think about it, we honestly don't need to generate so much waste. If you're going out to buy groceries, I'll give you an example from here. So in supermarkets, they have like reusable cloth bags and stuff that you can use. But for fruits and vegetables, if they're loose, they still have plastic bags. And most of the fruits and vegetables here are packed in plastic boxes and plastic packaging already next to the fresh fruit section. So it's basically a matter of choice. If you do have fresh fruits and vegetables in front of you, please do not choose the one that you see are packed in plastic. It's as simple as that. I know it might create a little bit of a difference monetarily, that you might see that a certain amount of plastic packaged foods or vegetables might be a little cheaper, but think about the greater good over there. If you see that there are fresh fruits and vegetables available for you, please do not buy anything that's in plastic. We don't face that much of a problem like that in India because we usually have fresh fruits and vegetables, not plastic packaged. But this is something that I keep telling everybody. Again, there's so many alternatives now available to even the toiletries that you use, like shampoos and conditioners and soaps. So previously we used to use soap. Everybody used to use soaps in house. Now there's body washes coming up, and there are shower gels. So now people use the shower gel in the bottle and a loofah and start using that. The soap has all of a sudden become very tacky because you need to have your own shower gel. You don't want to use a soap that's being used by others. I say you don't need that. There are so many options. There are like shampoo bars and conditioner bars coming up that you can use, so that you don't have to use the plastic bottles over here. Plastic shampoo bottles, plastic conditioner bottles. See, some things we cannot replace for sure. We know that. But wherever we know that there's going to be an option, for example, carrying your own water bottle, that is like a very basic thing. Instead of buying a 10 rupee Bisleri bottle every time you step out of the house, just carry a bottle with you and you can refill it up whenever you need. So with basic things like these that you can change in your house, the kind of the way you basically purchase your food items, the way you purchase anything in your house, basically, it will determine how much waste you can generate.
Does
And
it,
if you have a lot of, yeah,
it make you angry when you see people around this, because this is something very close to you, right? For example, like
yeah,
so when I see some Bollywood movie in which people are just hacking like this, right? So it
yeah,
does actually like that. It makes me angry because I am a software engineer, and when I see something like that, it's just completely wrong, right? So does it
exactly,
make you
yeah,
angry when people around you just throwing plastic bags and plastic bottles everywhere and not paying
absolutely.
for anything?
It absolutely makes me angry, and it makes me think that, this isn't really that hard to think about. If some people around you can think about it, I'm sure that you can think about it too. That's what I feel about it. So I can understand that not everybody has the knowledge of this field and not everybody has learned about all these things, but you don't really need to learn about things that you do in your daily life, do you? And not using a plastic bag. Now when they banned the plastic bags, you did not have an option. At that time you properly used cloth bags. Now that you have an option again, you want to use plastic bags. Why? Just because it's a little bit more convenient for you. You don't have to carry a bag with you when you go out. Just for that very reason, you will buy a plastic bag from outside. It's not required. Keeping your convenience aside a little bit, it will make such a big change, and it becomes a lifestyle. It's not that hard to make it your lifestyle. You do that thing once, twice, 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, you'll get the hang of it. And then once it becomes a habit of yours, you'll realize that you actually have some good habits that you're keeping, rather than just following your comfort and convenience. It's better to step up and do these things by yourself.
There is an American comedian, a very famous comedian, George Carlin. So he said in
Hmm.
one of his bit that the only legacy that humans will leave behind once our civilization ends is plastic.
Hmm.
So it was before
Yeah,
humans, it was Earth. After humans, it was Earth plus plastic.
true.
That's
Absolutely.
the only thing we're going to leave behind.
That is so true. And that is, you can literally see plastic from years and years ago still in the ocean floating like that. There's nothing happening to it. Now people are trying to revolutionize the way they make plastic and make biodegradable plastics and other products and everything. But why use it in the first place if you can avoid it? The refuse, reuse, recycle, the 3 R's that we say. I mean, it's actually 5 hours, but the 3 hours basically make a lot of sense.
That's where your
Refuse,
expertise come in. It's not 3 hours, it's 5 hours.
it's 5 hours, yeah. It's
Not only
refuse,
5 hours,
reduce.
continue 3 hours.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, 3 hours also should be enough for people who haven't done anything already. I think starting with 3 hours is fine. Then we can think about the 5 hours further. But I mean, yeah, if reduce, reuse, recycle are basically the 3 R's they have said. So what we can do is at least reduce the amount of resources or the extra plastic things that we use in our life. The refuse again comes before that, so that you completely refuse using any of these things. But if it's a transition, reducing is better anytime. So maybe let's say if you're transitioning, into following a zero waste lifestyle, you can start off with small things like not using a plastic bag or a plastic bottle. Then you can transition to using shampoo bars and conditioner bars. Sorry. So it's basically like that. You need to keep a transition to it and see how we can work towards it a little more every day.
So we are at the end of the podcast now. So as I just said, I have still a lot of questions unanswered. I think you will get more experience. Are you going to do a job related to this, or what's your?
I am planning to. So I just finished my master's now, so I'll be soon getting a job. Right now, I'm waiting for my visa to come so that I'll be able to apply for jobs officially.
What will be your job? Like what will be?
Well, I am primarily aiming to work as an advisor or a consultant in the field of sustainability. So there's a lot of companies over here that require sustainability consultants in their companies because they want to make sure that their company abides by the rules that are set out and the policies that are being formulated. And they want all the people, the workforce in the company as well, to follow these sustainability initiatives. So they need a coordinator or an advisor who will basically keep the emissions and basically the sustainability quotient of it in track. So that's what I'm aiming to do.
Like every school is recommended to have a sports teacher.
Basically like that.
Going. So you are the face of the company with respect to environmental things, right?
Well, not face exactly. That would become a really big thing for eventually. Yeah, eventually I will. Yeah, definitely.
So you will get more and more experience. So we'll meet you again once you get a bit more experience.
Definitely. I would really like to help out with all the technical questions that you asked me today. I feel that there's a lot of things that I don't know yet. And I think that now after having this conversation, I feel I should read up more because I honestly did not have a lot of technical knowledge and I never really thought that maybe I should go much into depth into it. But now that I've had this conversation, I feel like I should maybe explore it a little bit more, face a little bit of politics as well.
You could own it. Like I'm expert, ask me anything. I can.
Yeah, absolutely.
In my field, I have 3 years of experience in coding. But when I interact with some students, they ask some questions. I was like, okay, I never read of this. Like today, so I did front-end developer for 4 years. And when they asked me about a tool, that how you can work with that tool, and I was like, okay, I don't know this about. So interaction increase our knowledge because
exactly, absolutely.
It's very
absolutely
humble. It's very humble of you to even to acknowledge this that you don't know something. But it's very difficult in today's world because if there was somebody else would have just random opinions just to answer. That's a very nice thing. So you will be, but I will ask. We'll meet you after a couple of years again.
Definitely, love to do that.
Expert and you can answer much more deep questions about this. And you will
absolutely
a bit more knowledge so that I can raise my question levels.
Definitely. No, I'm really happy and thank you so much for asking me to do this podcast. I'm really happy that you're trying to put this topic forth in front of other people. Basically, there needs to be a lot of awareness about the way we live and about climate change and about the things that we can do on our own. And I'm really happy that I'm sure that this podcast will basically help a lot of people around us and maybe drive them to make a little bit of change in their lives as well.
Right. So thank you for you as well, because it's very difficult for people to get their time. And my whole idea of starting this podcast was to create something which is informational content. So that I started, and we just started out. So we had like 3 episodes, right? So we couldn't get somebody celebrity like person in environmental expert.
Absolutely.
You have quite amount of knowledge since at the end you did your MSc. So thanks for giving your time. I know you were busy in your visa and transferring for the house.
That's absolutely no problem.
Thank you for joining.
No worries. Thank you so much, Ganesh.
Do you have any blog? I think you have your own blog, right? So what I usually do, whenever I ask any guest, so I put their contact information, like their social profiles in the link, so that if somebody they can get connected to it or read about it. Like my coding friends, I gave their LinkedIn profiles in my video description. So do you have any social profile where you put out information about these things or something like that? Your website blog?
At the moment, I don't have one. I was actually planning to start a separate Instagram account for all these things, where I could post a little bit more about the small things that we can do in our daily lives. I don't have that yet, but I will definitely, you can definitely put up my LinkedIn profile in there. And what I would like to do is I would just like to provide you with a couple of links that have my research in it. So basically the things that I came to know about and the different things that I studied and the experience that I got from people, I would like everybody to know about that. So I'll share those links with you.
Okay.
Sure.
So you can always share the Instagram link afterwards as well. I can read it.
Definitely.
Anytime, just ping me the link.
Definitely, I'll do that.
And for all the people who are watching this, the links will be in the description. So if you're more interested in learning about environment and all this kind of things, you can visit Gautami's research. Okay. And if you have any questions or you want to just learn about the career that she's in, you can connect to her on LinkedIn. So her LinkedIn profile link will be there in the description as well. Okay.
Perfect.
So thanks everybody who are watching, and thanks Gautami.
No worries. Thank you, Ganesh. See you.